Anne Hathaway walked onto The Late Show with Stephen Colbert with her usual elegance, smiling radiantly as the audience erupted in applause. Dressed in a sleek black ensemble, she looked poised, confident, and ready for a fun segment. The evening was meant to promote her new indie film, a project she'd poured her heart into. Things started light, with Stephen cracking jokes and Anne playing along with polite laughter. But as the conversation veered into deeper territory, Colbert threw in a remark that shifted the tone sharply. "You've had quite the journey from rom-com sweetheart to trying to be taken seriously, huh?" he quipped. The audience gave a mixed reaction of half laughter, half awkward silence. Hathaway's smile faltered for just a moment. She shifted in her seat, eyes narrowing slightly. "Trying to be taken seriously," she repeated, voice calm but pointed. "That's an interesting choice of words." Colbert chuckled, trying to brush it off, but Anne wasn't about to let it slide so easily. Something in her snapped quietly, firmly. Stephen, unaware that he had struck a nerve, pushed ahead with a smirk. "I mean, coming out of Princess Diaries to indie dramas about grief, it's quite the pivot." His tone was playful, but the implication lingered. Hathaway stared at him, clearly collecting her thoughts before responding. "You know," she said slowly, "women in Hollywood get tired of that narrative, the one where we're expected to apologize for evolving." The audience clapped, unsure if it was the start of a feminist monologue or a viral moment in the making. Colbert tried to pivot with a compliment. "I meant it as admiration of versatility, reinvention, you know." But Anne leaned in. "You meant it as a backhanded compliment trapped in a punchline." The studio air grew heavy. People looked from her to Colbert, trying to gauge whether this was part of a script or something real. Hathaway wasn't raising her voice, but her words carried weight. It was clear she wasn't interested in pretending everything was fine for the sake of TV. Colbert, now sensing the shift, leaned back and raised his hand slightly. "I didn't mean to offend you, Anne. I was just making conversation." But Hathaway's expression didn't soften. "It's always a just conversation until someone calls it out, right?" she said. Then suddenly it's "I didn't mean it." But intent doesn't erase impact. The audience gave a few hesitant claps, recognizing the courage it took to speak up. Anne continued, her voice steady. "Every time a woman dares to grow, we get framed like we're confused or desperate. But if a man does it, he's exploring range." Colbert tried to insert a joke, but Hathaway wasn't having it. "Let's not try to deflect with humor," she added quickly. "This isn't a bit, Stephen, this is real." That discomfort was now undeniable. The dynamic had shifted entirely. Anne had taken control of the room. The planned jokes, the pre-written questions, the rehearsed transitions, they all fell away as the raw moment unfolded. Trying to salvage the tone, Colbert asked, "Do you think maybe people just don't understand your choices?" It was an attempt to reframe the discussion, but Anne wasn't interested in softballs. "I don't think it's about understanding, I think it's about assumptions. People assume I owe them the version of me that fits their memory." The room went quiet. Her words echoed off the studio walls, reaching far beyond the cameras. "Actors aren't dolls in boxes. We don't exist to comfort people with sameness." She crossed her arms, her gaze fixed. "I didn't come here to be patronized. I came here to talk about something I care deeply about." Colbert adjusted his notes, clearly rattled. "Then let's talk about it," he said. But Hathaway shook her head. "Now it feels like damage control, not a conversation." The audience was still, collectively holding its breath. What had started as a light segment had turned into a powerful commentary on how women in media are perceived and treated, even by so-called allies. Anne's intensity didn't waver as she pressed on. "It's exhausting, Stephen," she said, "to constantly be reintroduced, redefined, rejustified. When men evolve, they're allowed to. When women do, we're accused of losing ourselves." A few claps broke out from the audience, this time louder, more sincere. Hathaway sat forward, still composed, but clearly done with the pretense of celebrity charm. "We laugh it off because we're trained to," she said, "trained to deflect, to be likable, to not make people uncomfortable. But I'm not doing that anymore." Colbert tried to interject with, "I think people are just curious." But Hathaway cut in, "No, They're entitled. They feel entitled to an explanation for why we don't fit the image they froze us in 10 years ago. Her voice didn't crack, but it carried a tremor of restrained frustration. It was no longer about a joke or a question. It was about a pattern, a cultural reflex that she was confronting in real time.